Hey guys, it's Maria here from the Happy Healing Shop. Today I wanted to do a little something different. I wanted to talk a bit about portals, and I know this may seem a little random, but portals have been talked about quite a bit in various contexts. You may have heard of portals, energetic portals, portals opening up, people talking about, I think that house was built on some sort of vortex or portal, or things like that. Portals have, or references to portals have been mentioned in texts for a very long time, but maybe not called portals, but kind of the description of basically a portal. And the reason I wanted to talk about portals today is because I had two things happen very close together, and I was like, okay, I need to talk about portals then. The first thing that happened was I was talking to my partner at the Happy Healing Shop, Trang, one night about, she asked me about portals because she was using some dowsing rods at her home, and she said, I think there might be a portal or two in a couple different areas of my home. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And she wanted to know more about portals, energy portals. And so as I was talking to her, I realized I just started channeling information, just really detailed stuff started coming in, because she asked, why are portals made? How are they made? What are the different types of portals are and how could they be made? So that happened, and as we were talking, Trang mentioned, oh, we should have made this like a video or a recording because there's so much information here. And I was like, darn it. That happens to me quite often where I just start channeling and then I'm like, oh, but it just happens even in conversation or whatever, and I really enjoy it. And I feel like I'm just so in the zone. Sometimes it's at inopportune times. And then literally, I think it was a day or two later, I was chatting with my parents about portals because my dad's really intrigued by the idea of portals and vortexes and, people that go missing around certain areas that are thought to have some sort of portal or some sort of vortex. But they can't ever find these people or can't figure out what happened to them, or they discover them, 30 miles away somewhere weird and they're missing their clothes or something. And so then I started channeling again, and all this portal information started coming through, and I was like, gosh darn it, I wish I was recording this. So I'm going to try and I remember some of what I said, but I'm going to tap in again and see what information I can get for you today about portals, because I just thought it was a little synchronistic that I would get two portal conversations, very intensive portal conversations and channelings very close together like that. So yeah, so this is what this video is going to be about. So portals, vortexes, are they one and the same? Are they different? Well, from the information I received, a vortex can be a portal, and a portal isn't always a vortex. So basically, we can think of vortexes as something that's like a vortex and a portal is something like the Bermuda Triangle. There's a vortex, and it also can be considered a portal depending on how you use it. A vortex basically is something that has a lot of energy coming through it, in and out of it. And you can also consider something like Sedona, Arizona to be a vortex, because there's a lot of energy coming through it in various ways, and things can change around it. Now there's some similarities with portals where things can also be odd or change around portals as well. But portals, while they do have a lot of power and energy, they can also be more used for transportation. But sometimes, like the Bermuda Triangle, let's say, something that is a portal and a vortex can be used, can have a lot of energy coming through it, and certain types of beings that are more advanced than us may know how to use something like a vortex/portal for transportation and harnessing it in some way that we don't yet know how to do, or at least that we aren't aware of, that we're learning how to do. So Basically, the vortexes are bringing in like this intensive energy, and you could say it's interdimensional energy. And a portal, you can actually you can travel through dimensions with portals. It's an opening in space and time, and they're not always permanent. Whereas vortexes can be pretty much permanent. They're more of a, you could say, like built into the architecture of that area. Portals can come and portals can go. Maybe, yeah. Does that make it more clear? I'm taking a lot of like abstract information and visuals and trying to put it into words. So when you're talking about Bermuda Triangle, you can, like, it has a lot of energy coming through it, like a ton of energy, and that can cause weird interferences and things like that. But there's also a portal as a part of it. It also acts as a portal, so people can get lost through that portal into another, let's say, dimension, or they can, let's say their ship sinks because of the intense power and phenomena that happen around that increase in concentrated power. I hope I explained that okay. So then we have, let's talk a little bit more about portals. Portals can open up all over the place, and they don't have to be part of an area that has a vortex. If an area has a vortex, from what I'm gathering, it's more likely to have portal or portals attached to it. It's just because of the distortion it causes, it can create more of an incidence of portals. So now let's get into portals. How in the world does a portal open, and what happens when it does, and where does it go, and all these interesting kind of questions we can ask about portals. So what I was shown is that there's many different kinds of portals, and portals can be opened for a variety of reasons, but I was given a few kind of examples of how portals can open. Let's see how many if there's any more that come through during this session. So one of the ways a portal can open up is if there's an intensive concentrated energy in a certain area, either at a moment where it's so intense that it can kind of cause a distortion in space-time. That is one way a portal can open up. So let's say there was some sort of really tragic event that happened en masse, like let's say areas where there was heavy war, death, disaster, things like that, and the collective energy coming through that space was so intense and so at once that it caused a kind of distortion or a sort of tear in that kind of space-time fabric, because I'm just using all this lingo right now. Anyway, so basically if you have a portal that opens up in a certain area, let's say Gettysburg, or an area where there was a lot of, let's say a portal opens up in an area that has a lot of war. Well, it can cause a lot of strange supernatural type phenomena, and it can also attract certain energy to it, because portals and vortexes tend to attract energy because of the strength and power and distortion that happens. Also, things can come through those portals, and you know, it could be all kinds of stuff. It could be positive energies, negative energies. A lot of times if there's something really horrific that happens somewhere and a portal has opened up there might be more incidents of negative, let's say, than positive, because that's the dominant vibration of that area. So yeah, it depends. The portals are like, every portal is like a person. It has its own characteristics and personality, and no portal is alike. That's what I'm getting, at least. Another way portals can occur is by natural forces. So I was actually shown this really interesting movie or video and diagram of basically there are areas of the earth, as earth formed and as it cooled and as it matures, different geographic elements and also natural forces, be it weather or, you know, tectonic forces and things like that, can cause there to be excessive stress on a certain area in the earth. And from what I was shown, it seems like kind of areas that have a lot of geographic kind of anomalies and stuff. The forces that were so extreme that created those anomalies kind of over time stretched this. Again, we're talking about, I know this sounds super sci-fi, but talking about like the space-time fabric, which is just a generic catch-all term because I don't know how else to describe it because it is very complex. But just imagine, as many before have described space and time, let's say it is a dimension. There's many dimensions, but let's say our dimension that we are living in has a fabric to it. So let's say that there's a stress on the space-time fabric in that, energetically in that area for however long, and it's pulling like this over time. Things are pulling opposite, things are pulling up and down, things are pulling diagonally, the forces are so consistent and so strong that eventually not only do geographic phenomenon happen in these areas, but also, and weather phenomenon and other strange things like that, but also eventually portals can open up because of the consistent stress. And imagine if you had a piece of like cheesecloth, because that's what I was shown, because it has all those like fibers and you can kind of see it stretch if you were to pull it enough. Over time, if you pull consistently over and over and over and over, a weak spot will form, and that weak spot will eventually start to tear, and eventually it will become a hole. And when there's a hole from our dimension, it can lead into other dimensions because there's other dimensions stacked on top of our dimension. We just can't see it, but energetically a portal will open from our dimension to others. So what you might hear about in certain areas around the world are phenomenons like people walking around and then they're somewhere else, like back in time, or like somewhere, or they think they're in the same area but like they don't recognize any landmarks, and then somehow they make it back and everything's back to normal. Or people will disappear without a trace, or people will disappear for a time and then show up somewhere they couldn't have possibly walked to because it's not humanly possible for them to have walked on foot in that amount of time and then ended up on like the top of a mountain or something with no clothes on. So why, and we're going to dive into a little bit into this one because there's a lot of reported phenomena around this particular type of instance where there's like a portal associated with a certain geographic area, and there's a number of them out there that people are very fascinated with. But one of the examples I'll give you is like, because the area around the portal becomes unstable, the laws of what we know as physics and space-time, again, we have a very limited understanding, but to us it seems mind-blowing. But really, we just haven't gotten there quite yet with the science to really kind of elaborate on the details of this. But let's say in general terms, there's so much instability around this tear energetically, and that other strange phenomenon happens. So plant life and animal life may be strange in that area. There might be no plants and animals, there might be more plants and animals. There might be, people might get really weird sensations, people might get dizzy, sick, nauseous, people might faint, people might black out and forget where they are or what happened to them. People might see extraterrestrials, people might see strange beings, like let's say like a Bigfoot or like some other strange interdimensional being that they don't recognize in our traditional sense of reality. Basically, these portals are also unstable transports as well, and some are more stable than others. But a lot of these portals are very unstable. So imagine a roulette wheel. So imagine, now that I've given you the analogy of the roulette wheel, it's really just random. Okay, so let's say someone is walking in an area where there's that energetic instability because there's a portal there that we can't see it with our eyes necessarily, right? So they're walking and suddenly they're disoriented, they don't know where they're at, they're somewhere they don't recognize, or somewhere in the past, future, somewhere in between. you know, another version of that reality. So basically, you have someone who becomes very disoriented, and as the disorientation sets in even more, the human body, has trouble withstanding the forces of that travel through space and time so quickly and so randomly. And also, the human mind starts losing its sense of construct, it starts losing its sense of stability because it doesn't make logical sense, and people start to lose confidence in their reality. So it becomes very confusing, and all kinds of weird anomalies can be happening to them, and they don't understand what's going on, and so they might start doing erratic things like taking their clothes off, or they might get really hot, or they might not feel very well because of the forces being put on their body. That's an unnatural amount of force, like an unusual amount of force being put on their human flesh, and they start to disintegrate physically, mentally, emotionally, as they're stuck in this process of crossing maybe like a roulette wheel through different dimensions randomly, and sometimes they don't make it back because the roulette wheel just didn't fall back in their dimension. So imagine also like a broken scan button on your radio. Like imagine that scan button that usually cycles through radio stations and finds radio stations for you. Imagine the scan button is stuck and it just keeps cycling. Oh, and it stops for a little bit and then it cycles again, stops for a little bit, cycles again. But imagine it makes no sense and has no pattern. And maybe it does have a pattern, but maybe that pattern doesn't, you know, it doesn't happen while you're stuck in it, while you're still alive, and then you don't make it back through the portal, through that roulette wheel of instability within that portal, back to your dimension and your time. So now if you think about the concept of infinite parallel realities and who knows how many dimensions, it's a small statistical chance that you're going to make it back, depending on the portal, depending on its individual flair, personality, because there are forces that act upon the portal, and you know, different types of energies it's around, and different types of energies moving through it, etc. So basically, that can be why some people were just hiking, minding their own business somewhere in a national park, and then they go missing and no one ever finds them. There's no trace of them, or maybe there's like a backpack and then they don't find these people. A lot of times they are actually have been lost and they pass away as they're going through the journey, and their bodies just don't end up back in this reality. And I know this sounds really morbid. Don't be afraid. This does not happen very often, that probability lines up like that for them to even like walk through this area that's a portal. But it happens enough where we report on it, and of course we pay attention to the things that are sensational, right? So don't go being all afraid that you're gonna fall through some portal somewhere and never get back home, because it's very rare that it actually happens. A lot of things, like let's say statistically, have to line up, and the statistics, now I'm not a mathematician or anything, but I'm using the word statistical because if you were to somehow be able to quantify this, it would be very rare that it would actually line up where a being would end up getting lost in a portal. There's actually more times than not, if anything would happen, people can temporarily walk through an area like around a portal and experience a time distortion. And it's interesting, it's like an aura around the portal that is distorting things around it. So you can experience like lapses in time, loss of time, things like that, just by walking too near a portal. It's very interesting. So yes, that is one way a portal can happen. And also, the reason why there might be more extraterrestrial activity, let's see, perceived, extraterrestrial activity, sightings, things like that, around these strange areas where other strange things have happened, because there's probably a portal there, or a vortex, is because more advanced beings have learned how to navigate these portals, and they use them as shortcuts, you could say. And that's how they can harness those. They can also, again, use them to harness energy and things like that. So that is another reason portals open up. That was kind of a long-winded one. Okay, another way a portal can occur is if a person has a very strong energy field around them, like someone who's very maybe has a very strong psychic telekinetic, very, very strong psychic abilities, and therefore they may also have a very powerful magnetic, electromagnetic kind of energy coming off of them. So, and people who have abilities, like a lot of them have experienced this, where like they'll walk by and like blow out a light, some electronics won't work well around them, strange things will happen, things like that, like things will move across the room, almost like poltergeisty type stuff. And I personally experienced this quite a bit, so very familiar with these distortions. And I've seen a lot of portals open up next to my bed at night, which is always very interesting to watch. Anyway, so a person can actually open up a portal by being consistently in an area with that energy. Just like, imagine it's like a micro version of a force being inflicted on the earth over and over and over, and those portals are usually a lot bigger. A person-made portal can be basically a much smaller portal. It could be much smaller. Yeah, so in that way, beings can come through those portals, different types of spirits, different things like that, different energies can come through those portals. I've had portals open up a lot of times right next to where I sleep, and so that prolonged time of being in bed over the course of so long can open up these portals, which I've found to be somewhat temporary. And I don't know if it's because I always cleanse my area, or if I just consciously like don't want to keep interacting with the portal, or if because I keep a bunch of selenite crystals by my bed, and if I don't have them there, I notice more activity than when I do. There could be, I don't quite know exactly why. They seem to like be temporary, or maybe they just go dormant. But I have seen all kinds of interesting things happen. I'll get woken up in the middle of the night and I will see a portal in my wall, and I'll see beings coming through it. I've seen spirits, I've seen other dimensional beings, I've seen all kinds of stuff with portals opening up nearby me. So yes, but then there's times where I'll go long periods of time without seeing anything come through that portal, and it feels like nothing is open there. So I think there are some portals that can be temporary, being opened up by a person putting too much force in an area. Another way a portal can open up is beings that are, let's say extraterrestrial in nature, who have learned portal technology and have learned to create portals, kind of like the game Portal actually. There's a video game called Portal, and you can open up portals to move around the environment with a device. Let's say like it's like a portal gun or something, and you can open up a portal, go through the other side, close a portal, things like that. And I'm only using that as a very simplistic type of example, but let's say they've learned to manipulate space-time fabric to create temporary portals and wormholes for themselves so that they may travel through them, so that their distance and journey to different destinations are much shorter. Also, I believe that another thing I got was beings can open up portals. Again, other dimensional beings, not necessarily extraterrestrial though. So so let's say like higher dimensional beings that are trying to help you out or something. Let's say we can call them angels, or like other types of high vibrational beings that are working with you can open up a portal around you to help you, to save you, something like that. They can do that. So that's another type of energy manipulation used. And I don't believe, from what I'm being shown, that that happens willy-nilly, but it can happen. That's all I can think about right now as far as enumerating the amount of portals. But portals can open up, little portals can open up around different areas. Kind of actually, I don't know if I can quite classify this as another type of portal, but let's say it's kind of a spin-off or another micro version of the forces being exerted in a space to create a portal. So let's say like in an apartment building, there can be a lot of portals in apartment buildings because someone can open one. You may have heard this in all these like horror movies and ghost stories, and I'm not here to sensationalize those, but someone can open up a portal energetically by willing it to open. Let's just say by trying different types of, I don't know, trying to get in touch with certain types of spirits, and they're not, they're not closing them when they're done, these portals, like using, let's say, a Ouija board, which again, not sensationalizing Ouija boards are bad or anything, it's all about your intention and using it correctly. Never used one, just because it's not really my thing. I prefer other methods, but during a Ouija board session or doing a seance or using other kinds of divination tools improperly and not protecting yourself and not having the right intention, you can open up a portal. Yeah, you can open up an energetic portal and you can have beings that are maybe sometimes not so good coming through. I'm not gonna say it's always that case, but you can create opportunities for other beings that are maybe less desirable to come through those portals because you're not practicing good spiritual hygiene and you're not working on yourself, working on your shadows. You have the wrong intentions, or you're full of drugs and alcohol and things like that. You can, you know, with those that kind of mixture, it's, you know, not always great to do that kind of work. So if you're trying to use the Ouija board or do anything like that, make sure you have protection, use the highest, you always ask for things of the highest good, and ask your angels and guides or whatever higher vibrational beings you believe in to watch over the session. You can ask if angels are your thing, you can ask Archangel Michael to come guard the session, things like that. And always close it out. You always have to have an intention of closing it out, because when you do that kind of work, you are opening up a temporary portal. So that's another way a portal can open up. Don't get all scared. That's how the energy looks. It's like a portal. But then in apartment buildings, if someone is practicing that kind of unprotected, like, let's say divination or some sort of work in that realm, and it's not of good intention, it can open up portals that affect, you know, that stay there long after they move, because it is literally, like I said, a distortion, a hole in a space-time kind of fabric. You can close these portals, but it can be difficult. And there are some portals I was being shown that have been around for so long, they kind of have rooted themselves and kind of grown. And it's almost like when you have a tear in your jeans, using the fabric analogy again, if you have a tear in your jeans and it starts off as like a little tear and you're like, oh yeah, I could totally still wear these jeans, you know, and then you keep wearing them and the hole just gets a little bigger because the area around it is unstable, right? The fabric is unstable, it's frayed, and eventually ends up being this giant hole, and then you gotta retire your jeans. But it has gotten progressively bigger the more you put force on that tear. So there are some areas that kind of just keep progressively getting a little bigger and bigger over time. Been there a long time. So they're kind of notoriously odd places. So another thing about, let's say, communal living is that not only if someone is practicing some sort of unsafe, spirit work, let's say, or if someone is really chaotic and someone who's really like dark, they have a lot of dark energy, maybe they're violent, aggressive, abusive, those energies can kind of open up a portal, because again, those kind of energies are very, very harsh energies, and that kind of aggressive lashing out, outbursting, and then you have the people who are victimized by them, with these extreme emotions, that over time can create strange anomalies in space-time and also cause hauntings, even just like energetic hauntings that are just not by a spirit, like those people could still be alive, but like could cause like an energetic haunting, which, how do I describe it? Because everything's energy. It can cause a non-ghost haunting, if that's how you say it. It's the haunting of their energy, basically, that's left behind, the residual energy, which you could call residual haunting, but people could still be alive, that they just moved somewhere else. So it can cause weird anomalies like that and can open up types of kind of like portals in the complex, and then the next person who moves in is going to have like some strange stuff happening because there's certain energies that have been attracted to that darker energy coming through that portal, and you got to do a bunch of stuff to close it down and clear it out. So that's another thing that can happen. Now, another thing I forgot to mention about these portals that open up due to extreme force on the Earth through her own natural forces. These portals also kind of open up as like a venting of Earth's energy. So Earth having these portals opening up is a way of dispersing the stressed the stresses in that area, it kind of creates a relief, and energy from the earth can flow in and out. It kind of creates like a ventilation, almost an energy ventilation. It can kind of keep Earth's life force flowing and things like that. So that's another reason there's so much power going through there, is Earth benefits from that kind of circulation, let's say, of energy. So I'm actually was shown this really interesting diagram slash like video of like Earth and like all these little portals that are open up, and then like these arrows, almost like those science like diagrams, like the arrows like coming in and going out, like, you know, almost like when you're talking about like lava vents or something. And it's just showing all these little like flow lines, like, and arrows like going in and going out. So it's showing like a type of circulation, and there's like portals all over the earth, and these like well-known geographic locations that people have reported strange things, because there's literally, Earth is like uses these to vent her own energy and to keep herself balanced and strong and to have a vital energy. So that's another interesting thing that I was like, whoa, really? Yeah, that my guides gave me about portals and how Earth uses portals. Yeah, that's like, oh gosh, I could probably keep going about portals. I'm trying to see if there's anything kind of like vital that I missed here. Vortexes are usually naturally occurring, by the way, and vortexes are also another big difference between a vortex and a portal, is vortexes can be significantly larger than like a standard portal. Is there a standard portal? Again, trying to translate this into words. A vortex to me is being shown on a much huger scale than like a portal. Like a portal can be fairly small, but really powerful. A vortex can take up like a huge area. So like the Bermuda Triangle, I keep being shown that because it's like huge vortex. And that triangular shape is kind of part of that vortex. That triangular shape is kind of implying the area where the vortex, like the eye of the vortex, I guess you could say. And another interesting thing about portals, oh no, I just lost it. Anywho, so that's a little weird kind of intro to portals, but I'm not sure if I brought back in all the information I was like so fluidly channeling the other day. Portals are very interesting, and I'm fascinated by them now. Really fast. I've always kind of been curious because, you know, like I've seen a lot of portals open up around me. When I'm at night, I get woken up, I see beings hanging around, coming through portals on my walls, you know, all over, whatever. And I can sense areas where there's a portal, or sometimes I can sense where there's like a vortex, which is like a much stronger energy. Like sometimes I sense like a vortex can be like an entire city area, can be like the center of a vortex, for example. Whereas a portal can be more regional on a smaller level, so it can be like a few blocks could be like a big portal, or like a few blocks worth of area, or like it can be as small as like, I've literally seen portals open up in my wall that are like just big enough for like, or a little bigger than like a human to walk through, or like that are just small, like maybe like, yeah, a basketball and a half size portal, just big enough for someone's head to come through. Like I've seen different sizes of portals, and portals I think have a lot of variation in size. Vortexes can be, small vortex can be something like, let's say a few acre lot of land that has been like notoriously haunted for many centuries or something. That could be because there's like a vortex as part of that property. So, you know, that's like maybe like a smaller vortex. Or localized vortex. So, hey guys, this is just me channeling, interpreting what I was channeling the other day, and so let me know what you guys think if you've had any insights on portals. Obviously, you know, this is an interpretive art, so hopefully I have made these clear enough and given enough metaphors and visuals, because it is a little complex. It's pretty intensive, and I do not have a physics background, and yeah, I never took physics or anything like that, so I'm trying to describe it the best I can. I did come from a sciencey family a little bit, like, so I was around science and stuff, but I wasn't formally educated in physics or quantum physics or anything like that. So although I do find quantum physics very interesting and have, you know, read a lot about random quantum physics stuff. So I'm just going off my meager knowledge to try and put this into words for you guys. So hopefully you got something out of this. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think you have a portal in your home, or if you think there's a portal in a certain area. Usually you can kind of sense them. It can be like something's a little off, you know, or you sense like you get a little dizzy or something. Like there can be portals, you know, in hotels you visit or your home. Now don't go getting all paranoid about portals. It's not always a bad thing to have a portal in your home or around you. It's just that there's more energetic variances that happen around those portals and things like that. So you can close off a portal with intention, well, especially ones that are small and that you have maybe created or that have been in your house from the previous resident. You can also set boundaries of portals where the portal stays open, and you can kind of set boundaries so that the contents of that portal are not affecting you as much, or maybe at all. Again, guys, intention is powerful. We're gonna do a whole other video on that, but for now, enjoy, and I hope you guys stick around. We got more videos coming up all the time, so have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you again soon.